This is Hannibal here from the Hannibal TV.com with a good friend of mine. He's one of the reporters for the Hannibal TV, but it's actually the ninth anniversary of his podcast, the Two Man Power Trip of Wrestling podcast. I actually met him doing the podcast at one time, and now he's also involved with Vince Russo's brand of channels, and he does a Hulk Hogan podcast as well, a Tom Pritchard podcast. You see him do one very often with Russo as well, and the Taskmaster Kevin Sullivan, who's looking healthy as ever today. These days, I should say. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing good, doing good. Thank you for having me. How you doing?
Uh, we just had a big snowfall, and I think I've been getting a bit sick with this brutally cold weather that's back. But I'm doing all right.
Damn, snow. Damn, that's terrible.
Yeah, we had a good part of good weather, and now the snow has returned after melting.
We had a horrible week. All just rain all week.
Well, at least last weekend for Easter, it wasn't too bad. Of course, WrestleMania week this week, and I just heard you say on the Tom Pritchard podcast that you're going tonight too.
Yes,
Are you looking forward to that?
I kind of am. I'm a little bit excited just because I'm a big Rock fan, big Roman Reigns fan. I don't mind Cody. I mean, I am a Cody fan too, but I just like Roman and Rock even much more so. Hey, Ibsen. Hey, what's going on, Ibsen? But yeah, I actually sold the tickets to somebody for double what I paid for it, and the guy never paid. So I was like, screw it. Might as well just end up going. Me and a buddy of mine. So we're gonna go. So it should be pretty good, though. I think it'll be good. I think night two is the better of the card of the two nights as well, because you get Seth Rollins and McIntyre. Only one women's match. Not a huge women's wrestling fan, so you only get one women's match, which is good.
Yeah, hit the light bucket button, guys. Patrick, hello, Alfred, and
Alfred
Ibsen,
Kluse.
and Fish Sticks. JP is over like Rover.
Fish
I was
sticks.
telling JP that a while ago that when you first started being on this channel, you had a lot of haters, and then
Yes.
as time went on, uh, I've hardly ever. It's very, very rare that you get a hateful comment. I get far more hateful comments than you.
Damn, these people are brutal sometimes. Damn. I know they were mad that Shawn Michaels. I said that he wasn't a big draw, which if you go back and you look, he's technically not a big draw. But Phil, what's going on, Phil? Thank you,
Yes, he's
Phil.
congratulating you here.
Thank you, Phil. But yeah, I remember that I got some heat for the Shawn Michaels stuff, but then I remember Rick Bassman got a lot of heat for his Ultimate Warrior stuff, so the Michaels stuff kind of subsided. Mike D.
Yeah, the Michael stuff did, and you're definitely a big Hulk Hogan fan and Roman
Yes,
Reigns fan.
yes,
So
that's for sure.
I'm
And Beef
guessing
Patty
you're,
Man fan.
yeah, the beef patty man. If we don't, I never delete comments unless they're overly offensive or
Yeah,
something
you
that
can't.
YouTube is going to get me heat for. But
Right.
as far as Hulk Hogan, do you have a favorite match of his?
Man, I have so many favorite matches of his, but I always love it. And so many people don't really talk about it as much, but I just love WrestleMania 5 just because the build up was awesome. And then obviously the match with Savage is great. I know it's not the longest match of his WrestleMania career or of his career. It's only about 18 or 20 minutes, but I know I love that match because of the build up and the finish. And I just always think of WrestleMania 5 with Savage. I do love WrestleMania 6 with Warrior, even though the wrong guy may have won. I do love WrestleMania 7 against Slaughter. There's a couple Funk matches that I love. There's a couple Harley Race matches that I love. There's one in Philly that's great. There's one from MSG that's great. I like the Saturday Night's main event match that was talked about heavily on the Dark Side of the Ring with the Harley Race episode that just aired on Tuesday. Man, I got a ton of Hogan matches I loved. Actually, one of my favorites actually might be the boot camp match from 91 at MSG against Slaughter, too. That's very, very high up there on my list. There's a match with Valentine from MSG from, I think it's 84. That's one of my favorites. The match with Morocco that I love there's so many great Hogan matches. I feel like he's almost underrated in the ring, which underappreciated as well, which is crazy to say, but I feel like he is.
Yes, I mean there. I've had my ups and downs of liking Hogan over the years, mostly because Billy Graham. But he's. I never thought he was a bad wrestler, and for everyone that likes to say bad wrestlers are not Dean Malenko's, I take Hulk Hogan's judgment on you if you're a good or bad wrestler. Look at AEW; they just did one of their lowest ratings again, and it seems like this Will Ospreay, who everyone says is a great wrestler, he's been highlighted on the show and it's getting lower ratings every week. So quality of a fake technical wrestler doesn't necessarily mean
Not
that
always
you're
going
going
to
to
draw.
actually draw.
Yeah.
No.
Not going to actually draw. Osprey is awesome, though. I do love Osprey. I think he's great. I think he's one of the top 5 wrestlers in the world. But being one of the top 5 wrestlers, one of the top 5 hands, one of the top 5 workers, being that great doesn't also equate or doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a big money draw. So was Hogan the best worker? According to Bobby Heenan, yes, because the best worker puts the most ass in the seats. But as far as being the best worker, technically speaking, and being the best in ring guy, Hogan definitely wasn't, but he did make the most money. So you always kind of got to say, hey, we in this for money or are we in this for the 5-star matches? And I know CM Punk just recently said that he's in this for the money, not the 5-star match. He doesn't care about the 5-star matches. And obviously, Hogan didn't either. So Osprey is great, and I think he's awesome, and I think he's a top 5 wrestler in the world. There's no doubt about it. He's just not drawing for them, and I don't think they have many guys that will draw for them. And I think it has a lot to do with creative as well. So it's not all on Osprey, obviously, but I just don't think that that necessarily means money. Like you don't have to be a great worker and you're going to make a ton of money.
Yeah, someone mentioned not too long ago the Attitude Era had a relatively small roster compared to AEW, and it's like they have way too many guys,
Yeah.
and they can't feature. They should like be featuring the best ones every
It,
week
Yeah, it's
rather
crazy.
than the
Sometimes you don't
yeah.
see guys for a while. They kind of are on TV for a little bit, and you don't see them for a while. Then they're gone. Even Edge, they said he was going to be on every week. Sometimes he gets a promo. Sometimes he's not on the show. Sometimes he wrestles. It just feels like they don't focus on the guys enough. Like FTR, they're probably the best tag team in wrestling. They haven't seen them for a couple weeks. I don't know what's going on with them, but they just seems to be the pattern of AEW. I know Moxley, I guess, had a much needed vacation, but even he's been gone for a while without kind of any explanation. But it just seems like they got so many guys on the roster, but they don't really push enough of them. They kind of seem like maybe they're going in the right direction. They maybe getting like the right mix right now with Osprey and Danielson and Samoa Joe and guys like that and Okada. But it just seems like they'll be on one week, then they'll be gone for a couple weeks later. Hook will get a big push, and then he'll disappear for a while, and maybe just kind of being a part of 2-minute segments here and there. They just I don't know, I can't get in the flow creatively and can't push enough guys. And I know they just released 10 guys, but to me, is that really enough? I think that you maybe want to release even more guys, to be honest. And hey,
And he
by the
already
way,
hired one of the back.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's almost like they got to get rid of some of those guys. Just want to comment though, Andre versus Hogan WrestleMania 3. Yes, awesome. Very rewatchable. I know people say technically not a great match, blah, 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 this and that, but Hogan Andre, as Bret Hart said, it was a monitor sellout. It's a 5-star match. It was the most iconic match ever in the history of the business. So Andre Hogan, awesome. I love that match. And I just saw another Hogan, or did I see another Hogan match mixed in there? I think Ibsen put
Well,
another
I
good tag
agree
match in
with
there.
The Indian here.
Yes.
Yes, Bill Goldberg versus Steve Austin would be an amazing WrestleMania match, in my opinion.
Yes, should have happened. Should have and could have happened, I feel like. But yeah, WWE dropped the ball on a lot of those dream matches. Another awesome match, Hogan versus The Rock, WrestleMania 18. I rewatch that one all the time. Very rewatchable match and one of the best Hogan matches. There's a ton of them. There's a ton of great Hogan matches and some of the greatest matches of all time that have the most historical significance and some of the biggest matches. I don't know if you just saw it, by the way, and you're completely off topic, but just thinking about it, Bleacher Report just released the top 50 WWE wrestlers of all time, and the list is an utter embarrassment. What a shame, what a sham. And those guys that write for Bleacher Report obviously don't follow wrestling or really don't know anything about wrestling. That list was embarrassing.
No, I don't really follow them or see them as a valuable source. But you mentioned Macho Man against Hogan. That's actually what got me into wrestling. The first thing I ever saw in wrestling was the Saturday night's main event
Good one.
where
Yep.
they exploded that whole Elizabeth thing. And
You got
that, like,
lust in your eyes, Hogan. You got lust in your eyes. Yeah, that was awesome.
yeah, that sucked me right in. And then the WrestleMania like hooked me.
It was the best. That was, to me, the Hogan era is the best. And you want to say Andre Hogan, which led to all those pay per views. I mean, they created all these big pay per views off the back. Like, hey, how can we still make more money off of Hogan and Andre? Let's create Survivor Series. Let's create SummerSlam. Let's make Royal Rumble a pay per view. I mean, they did so many things to really, off the back of Hogan and Andre. But I feel like Hogan and Savage even upped it another level. Like you got Hogan Andre here, it's up, up, up. Hogan and Savage even higher than that, just because the pay per view buys were higher, they were making more money. Just to me, that's the epitome of like a year long storyline, investing in it and making it awesome and really building those characters and really building Savage, because he didn't turn right away. But at WrestleMania 4, you kind of saw he was a little bit untrustworthy of Hogan. He didn't know if Hogan was going to, flirt with his wife. He didn't know what was going on. But then you slowly build up every pay per view. SummerSlam, he's become a little bit more aware. Survivor Series coming aware. The Royal Rumble, they get into. Then Saturday night's main event, they finally explode. So I love that pay per view as far as WrestleMania 5. But I love that build. That's probably my favorite storyline ever. Hogan and Savage.
For sure. And I remember actually praying to God that they would get back together because I was a big Savage fan as a heel. And then I went back and watched all the stuff with the Mega Powers, and I wanted, when I was a kid, Savage to turn back babyface and team with Hulk
Yes.
Hogan again so bad.
Yes.
And the highest rated wrestling show of all time was the Hulk Andre. Didn't it do a
33
point
million.
18, 8 or
Yep.
an 18 rated? Sorry,
Yep.
not point 18. That's what we
No,
get these
no.
days.
Yeah, no. I think it was 18.2 or something like that. Yeah, but it was 33 million people were watching. And Chris Norman is 100% right. The Hebner, the double twins, what the hell was this? Him talking about he thought it was some sort of cloning Hogan. He didn't know what was going on with the twins, the Hebner brothers, but that was awesome. Hogan, Andre obviously screws him out of the title, eventually gives it to Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, which leads to WrestleMania 4 in the tournament. But man, that main event is awesome, and obviously it's the most watched show ever in wrestling. You want to say, hey, wrestling is making the most money now, but it definitely isn't the most popular now. I mean, you have about 3 million people at most watching it on a weekly basis. Back then, you had 33 million people tuning in for Hogan and Andre. Back when they were truly mainstream stars. I mean, they were all mainstream.
Yeah, there's just more sources of revenue now, and it's more viewed throughout the world. And of course, Peacock. I mean, for people, we don't even get it in Canada. But like it's like what, $5 or $10 a month for all the
Yep.
pay-per-views. So it's not like in the 90s it was like $60. I don't know what they would be if you still had to pay for them. But I think the cards have suffered because that they don't have to actually make people pay to watch the individual pay-per-views anymore.
That's what it
Like,
seems like. Like they'll put on less matches per show. I mean, the matches are longer. So if you're really, a fan of the wrestling and you're tuning into pay-per-views, the matches are longer, but they are shorter matches for sure. But it almost is a benefit too, because to the Booker, to Triple H, really, because it gives them like more leeway to do longer told storytelling. Like if you had to do a pay-per-view a month and you had to sell it, like you might be hot shotting angles. You have to put the title on Cody. You can't do this long build with the bloodline. So in a way, it's good, and to some people, but to some people, it's not. There's not enough good matches on there. There's not enough main event level matches, and some pay per views like Elimination Chamber kind of wasn't as good, or it's kind of lacking, and there's only 6 matches on the card, and it's just one of those things where it might be lacking that star power. But in the long term, I think it's a good thing because you get a longer built out storylines. Like the Bloodline is coming up on 4 years. They're building this thing. And obviously Roman Reigns is coming up on 1,315 days as champion. So I don't think if you're doing that every month, I feel like you might need to do a title change here or then. Now with the way Peacock is, you can kind of slow play it a little bit more of a slow burn.
I was surprised that it seemed like they put so much or so little effort into that elimination chamber star power because it was in Australia in a massive stadium, but it seemed like it got mostly bad reviews overall. There were some good matches, but there were some bad ones. And this, I mean, CM Punk didn't even appear. It's not like he's in a coma. Like he just has an arm problem. I was surprised that they wouldn't even bring CM Punk, considering supposedly wasn't he supposed to win Elimination Chamber originally?
Well, that's the rumor. If he wasn't going to win Mania, he was going to win at the Chamber and fight Seth Rollins for the title. So I'm not really sure what they were doing on that show. I think because it sold out and they had the 50,000 tickets and the stadium had sold out. I felt like almost they felt like they didn't need to put it into overdrive, and they almost didn't need to bring Punk in, because remember the rumor was months ago that The Rock was going to be a part of that show. Reigns was never booked, never a part of it. I don't know where that rumor started. That was a weird rumor, but he was never booked in the show. So they didn't have the world champion, they didn't have the number one star Roman, but the rumor was The Rock was going to be a part of the show, and he wasn't a part of it. So what they did was they had Cody and Seth Rollins do the Grayson Waller effect and do that talk show to put a little bit more star power on it. But I feel like that show was definitely lacking. It was almost like, hey, let's take the pedal off the metal here. We already have 50,000 people at the stadium, and it's sold out. So crazy.
Yeah, maybe they put out that false rumor that The Rock was going to be there to help it sell out. Then I don't even know who Grayson Walker is. Obviously, he's one of their
Grayson
stars.
Waller, yeah. The Waller, Grayson Waller effect, yeah.
It seems like that's. I mean, put the Brother Love show on and have Cody Rhodes on that. I'd rather see
Yeah.
that than some jobber doing a show. I mean, the funeral parlor was good. Piper's Pit.
Yes.
The barbershop was decent. Speaking of the Warrior and Hogan, after the Warrior won, 67,000 people said nothing and looked at Hulk Hogan leave, according to Brutus Beefcake. It was dead silence.
No, actually, if you really go back and watch, it's like a 50-50 crowd. Obviously, Hogan is maybe 51-49 Hogan or something like that. But it's pretty close as far as the popularity of Warrior. There's no doubt about it. He was super over. He just wasn't the draw that Hogan was. And obviously, you saw the decline with WWF with him as champion. All the wrestlers have mentioned it: less pay, less people at the arenas. And you could say maybe WWF was on the downturn there, on the downswing. But then they go back to Hogan again, WrestleMania 7 in 1991. So obviously, they felt like Hogan is the man and maybe Warrior's not. If you look at it in the whole grand scheme of things, obviously Hogan is the one that created this all. And the only reason really we're still talking about WrestleMania 40 is because of Hogan. But if you look, when he loses the title to Andre and Savage is champion for a year, the business does not go down. It stays the same. I mean, it's good business, great business. Hogan was a big part of that, obviously. But then WrestleMania 5, huge business with Hogan back as champ. 89, he's dominant. Then Vince decides, I'm going to make Warrior the guy. I'm going to make him the star. And he quite frankly, he wasn't the guy, but he was super over. He was a superstar. He was definitely mainstream. He just wasn't Hogan. And I don't know, maybe that's a fair or unfair comparison, because nobody's going to be Hogan except for maybe Steve Austin. But I felt like, was Warrior the right guy? It seemed like the crowd was really into him. There was people that were watching Hogan leave, but I don't know if sometimes Beefcake is a little off on some of his stories that I've noticed, especially the Dynamite Kid one. That was a little crazy.
Yeah, he responded to me on Twitter because I reposted that clip where he says they were green, and he said that Greg Valentine can confirm that. So if I ever talk to Greg Valentine, I'll ask him. But
do you think that Valentine knew that Dynamite Kid was probably the best wrestler in the world from like 81 to 85, really before he got to WWF? Do you think Valentine was aware? Seems like Valentine would be smart enough to be aware of that. That's just crazy, though. You could say maybe Davey Boy might have been a little bit more on the green side because he was younger. But Dynamite, if you watch those matches with Tiger Mask in the early 80s there, those are like the two best guys. I know you work rate or whatever you want to say, but in ring, those were probably the two best guys. And my God, I mean, Dynamite Kid was awesome. To call him green, 86, when he's wrestling the Dream Team in WWF, that's like the end of his career. He's already 12 years in at that point. So that's kind of the Dynamite winding down and having all the injuries and the other stuff come up. I mean, that's him winding down. There's no way he's green, and there's no way Valentine and Beefcake are carrying him in no way, shape, or form. He was one of the best wrestlers in the world. Not a chance.
That's a very good point, because didn't he pretty much retire in 91, which is like 5 years later?
Yeah, he was winding it down. Yeah, I think he started in 1974 or 75. So he had about 11 or 12 years of wrestling up until that point. WWF is the latter part of his career. That's like when he's winding it down. He's almost getting more towards retirement. I know he goes back to All Japan. He ends up retiring in the early 90s, but that's him at the end. He did all that great stuff from basically, 80 to 85 before WWF. And when he was in Calgary, when he was in Japan, he was like a god of wrestling in the ring. He was unbelievable. There's no way anybody is carrying him. That's just a crazy assessment of Dynamite Kid.
And one thing I will say about the Warrior, I mean, I never missed a house show back in those days. The arena that it went to at that time here holds 10,000. It's where AEW should have gone when they came here instead of the 20,000 seat.
Yep.
Or it might hold 11,000 for wrestling, but it was packed when the Warrior was here, and when Bret Hart became champion, it got so bad that they stopped even coming to that arena, and they went across the bridge to the 5,000 seat
Oh
Robert
wow.
Gertz Arena in Hull. And one of the last events they did there before the Attitude Era started, they only had 900 fans. And
Wow.
this was during like
Damn.
that Bret Hart run. So compared to the Warrior, I mean, they started going to that 5,000 seat arena here around 93. So it dropped pretty bad. So the Warrior, he was not at Hogan's level, but he was better than Bret
Right.
as a draw.
Yep. Makes sense. Yeah. More of a star.
What was your favorite house show you attended with Hogan when you saw him live? I've only seen him. I guess it would be Rougeau against Hogan for me for the WCW one.
Wow, nice, nice. There was a show. This random show in '93 at East Rutherford Arena. Hogan and Beefcake against Money Inc. But which was awesome, just because you see Hogan, and it's kind of almost like it's May of '93, so he's almost done with WWF. I mean, it's going to be a month later, and he's gone. So one of those things where this is going to be like the last opportunity to see Hogan and WWF in New Jersey for a while, anyway. So that was probably my favorite. And also on the card was Macho Man versus Giant Gonzalez. And the Steiner brothers run the card and Owen Hart, so pretty good. Hey, give me Sky. Thank you. Thank you,
Mike
Jack.
D would agree with you that that card would have been awesome if you had Macho Man against Gonzalez, because he likes some of those bizarre wrestlers. Here he is. Wants to know
Yes.
your favorite bizarre wrestler: Papa Shango, Gangrel, Goldust, Doink, someone else.
I gotta go Goldust. I love Goldust. Although I do love Matt Bourne, the heel Doink. I gotta go Goldust. He was I don't know, just what a weird character. You didn't kind of can't really get comfortable around him because he's doing that androgynous thing. Is this guy gay? Is he not gay? Is he doing it for like he's mentally messing with the guy? Psychology. I mean, what's going on with Goldust? But then of course it's Dustin Rhodes, one of the best wrestlers in the world. So I love Goldust. That's probably my favorite. Although Giant Gonzalez, that is a good one. Although that gimmick that the outfit itself was a little strange.
I will say this: he does, like they always talk about underrated. People hate Giant Gonzalez. Like you always hear about how bad he was. He was over like as this big scary heel. Like I remember going to house
Yeah.
shows and like
Yeah, he was
people were
over
like in awe.
when I saw him. Yeah, he was just because it's like that freak factor. When you get those giant guys, they always get like that, oh crap pop, like, whoa, this guy is huge, or wow, he's even bigger than I thought. So he always would get a reaction. Even Omos, when I went to the MSG show, I went to the Punk return show, which sold out MSG and was the biggest money making house show in WWE history with Punk's return there when he wrestled Dominic. Omos made a surprise appearance. He wrestled R-Truth. He beat him in about 2 minutes. But he got a huge pop when he came out. Like nobody knew he was going to be on the show, but he got that like whoa pop, and he's a monster too. So I would imagine it's the same thing with Giant Gonzalez. But when I saw him at that house show, it was the same thing. I remember the crowd was like shocked with just how big of a monster he was. So when Vince always has those big guys, those freak shows, people think they stink, they're not good in the ring, this and that. They always get that reaction from the casuals, even me, the hardcore mark or whatever you want to say, the hardcore fan. You always get the reaction like, "Wow, this guy is a big SOB." I mean, he's a freak show.
I do remember the house show I saw him against the Undertaker on. They only went about 5 or 6 minutes. And I remember like everyone after was like, wow, that's an incredibly short main event. But now looking back, probably the Undertaker didn't want to wrestle him that long.
Yeah, saving Giant Gonzalez. Or, not he's gonna have a terrible match, but they're probably not. Odds are not gonna have a good match. So it's probably better off short and sweet, and leave everybody going home happy instead of like, oh, this match is still going on. Jesus, this is terrible. Probably short and sweet might be better because Savage Giant Gonzalez wasn't very long either, from what I remember.
ATF media, how many cases of CTE do I think were caused by punches from hands of Stone Ronnie Garvin? I'm guessing about 20,000.
I totally agree with ATF. He loves Ronnie Garvin, but I totally agree. I worked with Ronnie Garvin a few times, just as far as bringing him into some conventions, did a Q&A with him. When you shake his hands, it's like, they're not huge, but he's got like this bear claw of a hand. Yes, we love Hogan. Yes, me too. He's got this like kind of bear claw of a hand. And when he shakes your hand, he's got this grip. So you could literally, when he shake your hand, you could literally feel the hands of stone. I could see why, Andre liked him a lot, and maybe he could beat up Andre. It's like maybe the old rumor, but he was arguably one of the toughest guys. And I loved his punch, and I love Garvin's matches with Flair. I love Garvin's matches with Greg the Hammer Valentine for WWF. I know that's one of those feuds that people throw out there like, that's a mid card feud. I love that feud. I thought that feud was awesome, and those matches are awesome. And they had a match in '89 MSG towards the end of '89. Man, they just blister each other with chops. I mean, they kill each other. I love that match. I think on one of those message boards, they had it as one of their favorite matches of the '80s. So I got to put Garvin very high on my list. The Hands of Stone probably did cause CTE. I'm going to probably go out on a limb with ATF there and agree with him.
I just mentioned that I liked Hogan against Rougeau, and I remember actually an independent show that Jacques Rougeau randomly did in Alexandria, Ontario in about 96, and it was Rougeau against Garvin, and there was about 900 people there in a small town, and that was a great match. Like Garvin just blistered Rougeau, and Rougeau's actually pretty tough as far as taking chops, and they really went at
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah, he hits hard. You could just tell, and just obviously you could see with his hands, but meeting him, feeling the hands, and like, man, this guy probably hits you like a load of bricks. Him and Flair used to go at it. Obviously, him and Valentine used to go at it hard. So I wouldn't want to get hit by Garvin. Him and Big Bubba Rogers would kill each other. I wouldn't want to get hit by Garvin. Dave
Dave
Cole, thank you,
congratulated
Dave.
you.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, and I will mention this for Hogan for that Montreal show where he beat Rougeau, or where Rougeau beat him, I should say. He hadn't been to Montreal since WWE at that point, and they love him in Montreal. So Rougeau was actually booed, and like it
Whoa.
was pandemonium. Like I've never been, and this includes the Montreal Screwjob. I was there too. I've never seen a crowd more upset than when Rougeau beat Hogan. They were so mad at that finish, but at the same time, I'm sure all these years later they were glad that Rougeau won just for that like little thumbs up to Quebec. It was almost Hogan saying, "Thank you guys for supporting me all these years. I'm going to put one of your guys over."
Yeah, and that's Hogan's call, obviously. I mean, which everybody probably knows anyway, he kind of calls his own shots, and WCW does whatever he wants. Basically, he could win, could lose, whatever. So he calls his own shots there. I mean, he definitely kind of threw a curveball there and job to Jacques Rougeau. Pretty shocking. I love that.
Yeah, definitely. Everybody was shocked. And I remember the guardrails were actually bent halfway. People were so mad, and people were throwing garbage and stuff.
Wow.
But just to show you how disorganized WCW was, people had traveled from everywhere to go to this. There was like 15,000 people. They had no merchandise,
Oh my God.
not even NWO shirts.
Jeez Louise, this organization, you got to have NWO shirts. Hell, if you go to WB shirt shows now, they have NWO merch and Steve Austin merch and Hogan merch. Just crazy that they couldn't kind of handle that end of the business, and WWE was the master of it. I mean, the licensing and merchandising WWE is second to none. They would have a million Hogan shirts if they were running that show.
100%. What do you think of AEW coming to Canada here recently? Jericho's on the center of all the posters. He's only on one of the shows. Moxley was on all the posters. FTR was on a few of them. They weren't. I think they were only on one of the shows. It was just they advertised a lot of people. I would say on some of the shows, like 70% of the people that were on the poster were not actually at them. I can't see I know WWE does it sometime, but Jericho's a pretty big star to put on the poster and then not actually have the shows. Like you can't put The Rock on a poster and then like
Right.
have him
Yep.
not show up. But it seems like
Yeah.
I know it's going to affect their business upon return business, but it seemed like no one made that big a deal of it. But you show up and it's all these nobodies wrestling.
Yeah, that is strange. I haven't been, I mean, I've been watching Dynamite. I haven't been paying too much attention to Rampage or Collision as much. I know Jericho was on a Dynamite a few times, but just with kind of backstage stuff with Hook, and then he did an interview at the top of the ramp with Hook, but he didn't wrestle. But sometimes with that stuff, when you do that, it is card subject to change. But that can be definitely perceived as a little bit of bait and switch because usually who's on the poster is going to be who's on the card for the most part. I would think. Like WWE never puts Roman Reigns on a poster and have him not be on the show. Like if he's on the poster, you know who's booked for the show. You know well in advance he wasn't on Elimination Chamber because there was a bunch of other guys. Even Cody was on it, and he made an appearance. But they never do that. That's like a bait and switch kind of tactic. You're right. Will affect return business for sure. People are not going to be like, oh, they're on the poster. I don't trust them. They might not be on the show this time around.
And another interesting thing they did, they got us an interview with Evil Uno right before the Ottawa show. Of course, we're based in Ottawa. You would think that would be an important interview.
Yeah.
And then they tell us half an hour before he's not doing it. So it's like you don't even have your guys showing up to the interviews that you're booking.
Wow, that's not good either. That's pretty shitty of them. That sucks.
Yeah, bizarre stuff. Wish them the best. It's great that all these people. I mean, I'm glad that Jake the Snake's getting a payday. He wasn't managing Lance Archer on the show though. I was disappointed.
No. Nope. Archer
I
had a
don't know what.
great match with Danielson on Dynamite last night. I love that match. But yeah, I was surprised Jake wasn't with him, even though Jake is supposed to be Archer's manager. And he re signed with them. So he easily could have and probably should have been on the show. But again, another guy signed that just isn't being used. But with AEW, I mean, you got to root for him because without them, WWE sucked for 20 years. Let's be honest. Let's be frank. I mean, Vince was in cruise control. The creative was terrible. The Cena era was terrible. The PG era was awful. I mean, all this stuff with WWE, I mean, they were so bad. All of a sudden, AEW is in and starts up, and they start the company, and then WWE puts into overdrive. Like shit, we really have to have good creative now. We really have to put on good shows now. We have competition, so I feel like competition is what's needed and what's best. And I feel like the success of AEW is very important. So let's hopefully right the ship on some creative. Maybe get somebody else in there. I know Tony owns it and he wants to be creative, and that's the whole reason of being the owner and and putting your heart and soul into it. But sometimes you have to be smart enough and be wise enough just to step out of the way and let somebody else be the creative person, and let them kind of continue on and see what they could do creatively. Because right now they're pretty much creatively bankrupt, I think, in a lot of areas. Just it's just not going well that way. But we need them to succeed. We want them to succeed because that makes WWE better, and that makes the wrestling world better, and that means these guys are going to get paid more. That means more wrestling on TV. It means more podcasts get to cover it, more advertising for podcasts. So I feel like if AEW is successful, it'll make them even more successful, and it just helps the business in general.
Yeah, I wish there was more options when I was in the prime of my career, but TNA really was taking very few Canadians if you unless you had a direct connection because of the work visa issue, much smaller. And WWE still had a lot of WCW and ECW guys. So there's less options, but now there's like AEW and WWE with
Yeah.
AEW like a legitimate pay competition. TNA's still around. NWA is also around. Although they pretty much ever since they went on that app, people have stopped talking about them. So I don't know how much of a good move that was.
Yeah,
Then
the CW,
MLW.
yeah, the CW app. Yeah, I'm not sure, which is funny because if you actually go on the CW app, it's actually so much easier to use than Peacock. Peacock's kind of a little bit of a pain in the ass, but to me, I put on CW, it's like, oh, NWA, it was just so easy to use, but it is weird. It's like, man, they got to do something to kind of get the business flowing again, and just I don't know, get some eyes on the NWA, because like another thing, if they're successful, it helps everybody else make more money. Just and another option for the wrestlers, another place for them to go, another place for them to work. So I don't know. I just hope NWA, continues to get some popularity. Hopefully, get some more eyeballs on them. There's a lot of wrestling out there. I'm just not sure how many people are watching it all. It's just almost maybe it's almost too much wrestling right now. But as far as being on TV, obviously WB and AEW is where it's at.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because with YouTube, at least when NWA was on YouTube, everybody could watch it. And now if they're only on the CW app, I guess people that don't have the CW probably can't watch it. So maybe less people overall. Just I know we hear some things here and there, but it seems like overall less talk. But I was going to ask you about Ring of Honor. Do you think Tony Khan, because these shows are so long that for these tapings and like for the collision I saw here, literally 1,000 people left after collision because by that point it had already been 3 hours, and they're like putting all these Ring of Honor matches on. I don't know how many people will have the Ring of Honor app or whatever it is,
Honor
but it's
Club,
like
yeah.
yeah, it's like these wrestlers they weren't really over the one in the matches I saw, and it's like it just drags out the show, so people leave with like, oh man, that was long, like
Which is never a
rather
good
than
thing.
having
You
yeah.
Yeah, you almost rather them, leave happy. Even if it's a shorter show, leave happy. You're much better off. I don't know what's going on with Ring of Honor. I don't know what like the game plan is, or even how many people have Honor Club. I mean, it's good that those guys are wrestling and keeping busy and they're making money and they have a job, but I don't know how many people are watching, how many people are paying attention to it. I don't like the fact that it's being taped with AEW. Just makes the show for the people at taping, which I've heard so many people say just too long and it's annoying. So I'm not really sure if that's a good thing or not. I actually kind of liked it when they were doing it at the sound stage. I feel like that was kind of a good idea. I kind of like that idea.
Yeah, it's more fitting. And the other thing too, and this falls under booking too, because I assume if Tony Khan's the head booker, that he's structuring the shows, but it's like the show didn't start on time. It started like 10 minutes late. Then they made us watch the control center and all this stuff on the screen. So the show had already been going on for half an hour before the first match took place. So it's like, wouldn't you not want to do that since that's pretty boring, anyways? And like put another bunch of matches before collision rather than have tape so many after when fans are just going to leave? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. It's too long, way too long of a show, too long of a night for the fans.
So as far as interviews, what have been some of your interviews from hell? We all have no shows
Yes.
that we have to deal with, or sometimes rescheduling. I know one of mine that people always get on my case about is me doing an interview with Buff Bagwell when he was out of it, but he had already no showed 2 times. So what am I supposed to do
Yeah,
when he
you got to
finally
get
shows
them.
up? He's
Yeah.
not like he was already paid. He's not going to give me a refund. But what are some of your cases like that?
As far as no shows, crazily enough, and I love her, but crazily enough, Mike McGurk like no showed me so many times. It was crazy. Just yes, 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 and then just with no show. So I finally got her, and she said, "Oh, let's just do it in person." I saw her at a convention last year. And we did a shorter one in person. I guess hopefully now we could do a longer one on the computer. But yeah, that was crazy. I couldn't believe it. Tommy Rich at one point, he literally for like almost a year, it was just crazy. It's like, all right, we'll do it then. No, we'll do it. Like he just kept no showing, and then finally, he called me out of nowhere. He's like, "Hey, are we doing this?" And I was like, "Tonight? You know, showed like 10 times in a row. What do you mean?" And we finally got it done. And he was actually really cool, and he was kind of funny about it afterwards. I'm not sure what the deal was and why we couldn't connect beforehand, but those two stick out. And as far as an interview that went down, I thought went horribly wrong or just wasn't great was China, because I feel like the guy who was controlling her, handling her at that point, she was getting a little off the rails. I don't think she was with it. I feel like he kind of took advantage of her and kind of just put her on the phone, and she just wasn't with it. So I kind of felt bad for her. But the China interview definitely went wrong.
Interesting. Do you still have that one? That'd be a good one to put on
Yeah.
here.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Interesting. Yeah, the one that like kept putting me off that I finally gave up on was that Chad Dick guy. And I'd even wrestled him
Oh
before.
yeah. Yep.
And it's like I can tell why he had heat in WWE. He's a space cadet type.
Yeah, it seems like his old tag team partner wasn't a big fan of his, and it seemed like a bunch of the guys from WWE, like even like the main event guys, weren't a big fan of him.
Yeah, in a way, the bullying was good because it weeded out a lot of people that maybe had bad attitudes.
And it's
Maybe
funny
maybe
when
they need that in AEW.
But it's funny, like who they say was like these big bullies and what they would do. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm old fashioned, but I didn't really consider that bullying. I just was like, oh, it's like it's kind of hazing. It's a pain in the ass. Are they kind of being annoying? Yeah, but is it really bullying? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on it. Maybe I'm just crazy, but I didn't consider some of that stuff and some of those stories I heard bullying. I just thought it was like jokes, pranks, and ribs. I didn't think it was bullying to me, but other people do. Other people think it was bullying.
I think Bradshaw stealing Justin Roberts' passport or whatever so he can get back to the U.S.
Uh,
That's one
to
of his
me,
animals.
and I know Dr. Tom told me he even said like he thought that was like too far, like he didn't think that was a good prank. I said that's awesome because the person is thinking to themselves, "There's no way they can get back to the United States. So what are they going to do? How are they going to get back? They have no passport." Obviously WB is going to help him get back, and he's Bradshaw probably alerted them, hey, this guy's stuck over there, or he got in touch with somebody. But to me, that prank is awesome. I would love to do that to somebody. I know it's mean spirited and it's terrible, but that one cracked me up. I mean, that takes some planning out on that one. Like that's really crazy. But I like that one actually.
And I don't know if it was Briscoe doing this interview with you, but it was one of the times Briscoe was on this channel. He said that JBL didn't do anything without the Undertaker's permission, so he like kind of
Richie
had his
Taker,
back if
yeah,
anything
was okay with it.
went
Yeah,
wrong. So he
I did hear
secretly like
I did hear some pretty good Briscoe brother ribs because yeah, everyone always says the Steiner brothers can pick on anybody they want because who's going to do anything, and they're not really bullying. And I obviously interviewed Scott, and there's a great clip from it on this channel. And Scotty Steiner was saying they didn't bully anybody, but the Briscoe brothers would tie people up and put them in their trunk and wouldn't let them out of the trunk. So like that like okay, oh they're bullying whatever. Like that almost is you got to like fear for your life. Like, can I breathe in here? If you're claustrophobic, you're going to freak out. But obviously, they let you out and like they see how you react, but and that's part of the rib. But I was shocked. The Briscoe brothers were big pranksters, big rib guys. But obviously, no one's going to mess with them either. Two of the toughest guys in the business.
weren't they involved the time that Mike Rotundo supposedly lost his ball sack going over a fence naked?
I believe so. I believe they
Yeah.
were involved, and I believe they were also involved in pretending to shoot somebody too. I believe, and there was a ricochet involved. Like the bullet hit off something and then ended up hitting one of the boys.
Honestly, I know they're making more money than ever, but like I think one of the reasons why wrestling was so good back in the days because to make it, you would have to be a crazy person. I think I could have made it in those days because I'm pretty sadly crazy, but like you had to be like half crazy to just survive the torture and like you had to go out in those days too, or you wouldn't be considered one of the boys. So
Yep.
you wouldn't get that push. And when they would go out, they would do all this wild stuff, and you had to be like Piper. Piper talked about it too. Like you start off crazy, then the wrestling business makes you more crazy in those days.
And you had to been tough too, because sometimes those guys will shoot on you, whether they're drunk, sober, whatever. Sometimes they'll shoot on you just to test you, or a guy at a bar, random street fight or random bar fight. So you had to be legit tough because you couldn't embarrass the business, you couldn't lose. So there was pressure on those guys to make sure if they were going to get in a fight, they better win by hook or by crook. So whether those other guys are messing with them or quote unquote bullying them or whatever, you just had to be tough and you had to be able to last. Because if you couldn't last, you weren't going to last with those boys and they weren't going to let you in the locker room. You weren't going to be part of the business. So you better be tough, and you better be a fighter, and you better be able to drink a little bit too and hang out and party with the boys.
And one of the reasons for the bar fights is they went into those towns every week in a lot of cases, like Florida, So if a guy lost a fight, word would circulate, especially in some of the smaller towns. But
Yep.
again, if you won a fight, that word would circulate too, and then that would probably
Yep.
help business.
I'm just always surprised that they always talk about like these fights and stuff that nobody like got severely. I mean, there's stories of obviously guys getting injured, but I feel like maybe the cops are covering up for some of these guys that like Harley Race is like almost murdering people in bars and like, kind of getting away with it and basically driving away and getting away with it. So some of those stories are just crazy, but I'm surprised there's not more like, hey, this wrestler, almost killed somebody at the bar. They kind of were covered up, I feel like, on some of those stories.
Yeah, because they showed it on the documentary when Harley like knocks on his forearm, but they were doing it talking about like how he's full of steel. But according to Flair, which I think Flair may have told you, like his forearm weighed so much because it was almost like pure steel that he when he punched someone, that's like
Yeah.
worse than a brass knuckle.
Yeah, yep. And I was talking about this with Dr. Tom, but I was mentioning this to Flair too when I interviewed Flair, and I said, he was so tough that two guys, one in front, one behind, he'd punch and then back elbow, and then Flair said he would do the headbutt and then headbutt to the guy with the back of his head. So I mean, he didn't care if it was 2-on-1 either. He obviously is one guy you wouldn't want to mess with, one of the toughest guys of all time. But I love those old fighting stories, especially Harley Race. Flair loved them. I mean, Flair wouldn't stop telling stories about Harley Race. He loved them.
Yeah, the one thing about the Iron Claw, I would have to say from watching that documentary was like how bad the guy's impression voice wise of Harley Race was in the Iron Claw. He didn't
I guess
have it at
he
all.
was. I think he said, if I remember correctly, he said he didn't want to imitate him. He just wanted to play a character based on Harley Race. He didn't want to do an imitation of Harley Race because he said it would have came off bad. I don't know. Maybe that's just his excuse after the fact of maybe not nailing it to what the fans wanted. But I guess I don't know. I guess that's a decent excuse for him.
Yeah, to me that took away from the movie. I just rewatched it and rented it from YouTube on the weekend because I fell asleep in the theater. And funny enough, I fell asleep in it again
Oh
on
my God! Why?
YouTube.
Why
And I managed
you can't
to
get
wake
through
up
it?
and
It's a good
rewind
movie.
it. Yeah, yeah, it was good that they did it, but there's some slow parts in it to me. Maybe it's just because I know the story,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I just can't get over that Kevin is so jacked in the movie, and Carrie has like a not a horrible body, but he doesn't look like Carrie. Kevin looks like Carrie.
That was like an odd thing. He almost had to get a little bit used to it at first with that movie. Was that Kerry wasn't like a god, which he really was. I mean, he was obviously like 6'2", probably 265, chiseled Greek god, and obviously he was very small in the movie, very short. Obviously, they picked that guy Jeremy White. He's a good actor, and that's why they picked him. But it was weird if you actually look at Carrie Von Erich, who's like a Greek god. This guy is a monster, and then the guy who played him in the movie. It's just kind of weird casting, but I mean, they went with a guy who was a good actor and could fit the part and look like him in the face, just not body wise at all. And I think Ragu Overlord was saying he did not like the Ric Flair character in that movie either.
No, the best part about the Ric Flair character was the costume, but I didn't
Yes,
like the
very good.
promo.
Yeah, he said too, that guy, that he didn't want to do a Flair imitation. There's too many Flair imitations out there.
Why even show the damn like if you're not gonna do the Ric Flairs, like what benefit did it give by doing those promos, honestly? Because I don't know, to me it didn't add anything and it was already a long enough movie, but
Yeah, yeah. Good
whatever.
movie though. I liked it. Obviously, it's not historically accurate, some of that stuff, but good movie. I liked it. I thought it was really good. Obviously, it's super emotional too. And I know a lot of people were questioning the end, like if it was like kind of pro suicide. And I thought that was a weird argument by some people that were saying that, because it definitely was not. It was what Kevin was thinking in his mind was happening. So it was like Kevin's way of understanding why his brothers passed away and why he died. So that was kind of a weird that I thought take that some people had on that movie. That was just in Kevin's mind. That's what where his brothers were, and they were in heaven. They were rekindling, reconnecting. Had nothing to do with how they died. It was in his mind where they went. So I thought that was well done.
Yeah, and I guess Kevin too, like they made him out to be innocent and a virgin and stuff. And he just did an interview with Unleashed TV where he talked about that he even broke up with his wife for a while because he wanted to enjoy college and like the all the girls wanting him in
Right, right,
college.
which
So
is absolutely normal and
yeah,
perfectly okay, but I guess the movie wanted to make him more wholesome, which is fine, I guess, but I mean, that's he's just being a normal guy, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm ok I'm good with that, though.
and we have heard he was at one point, from what I've heard, and you've probably heard this too, pretty close to Carrie in the party, and he just overcame it all. Like, but we've heard that there's a lot of.
Yes.
I like Kevin, but from the stories I've heard, one of the issues was he kept no showing a lot,
Yep.
and like what's his name, Lance Von Erich talked about it to you,
Yeah.
and it's because they were having those personal issues too that everyone likes to just forget and act like Kevin was pure the whole time, but he overcame it, thank God.
Yeah, thank God he overcame it. I mean, obviously they both had their issues. Carrie, I guess, would be considered worse with some of those issues, but definitely they both had it. And they're the number one guys in Dallas. They can get anything they want at any time. Everybody wants to party with them. So I mean, it's just almost too much of a good thing, if you will. Not that partying is a good thing, but just too much fun, I guess they were having. And Jeff Jarrett talked about it, and Lance Von Erich talked about it with me. They would no show shows. I mean, they would just flat out miss shows, and they didn't kind of think about it. Think about the consequences of those actions of missing the show.
Yeah, that was one of the things that hurt the business, according to Jerry Jarrett. Um,
Yep.
that like it had killed the towns, and I guess Eric Embry was actually living in the sportatorium at the point when he took it over.
Yep.
Who I like Eric Embry. He's a nice guy.
Yeah, he's awesome. Super nice guy.
So as far as your interviews, you've had so many great ones. I mean, you even got a short interview with Hogan.
Yes.
You got Jesse the Body, the elusive Jesse the Body,
Yes.
who's on my list. You got Billy Graham, which he was a rare one. Who? What are some of your favorites? I know we could do like an hour of you just naming all of your
Oh yeah,
favorites.
yeah. This guy, that guy, Hogan. Obviously, I know it's short, but Hogan is definitely up there. Favorite wrestler ever. So obviously, getting him and the number one wrestler ever in the history of the business. So that's a huge one. Ric Flair was another awesome one. Bruno Sammartino was another rare, awesome one. Mick Foley twice was a lot of fun. Jerry the King Lawler was awesome. Had the opportunity to interview Terry Funk 3 times. He was awesome. Early on interviewed Harley Race. Just awesome to say interview. Not that it was necessarily a long one or a great one. Just awesome that I got the chance to interview Harley. Got the chance to interview Dusty Rhodes and do his final interview. It's one of my favorites. Of course, Kane a few times. He was fun. AJ Styles. Cody Rhodes was a great one. Dustin Rhodes, another great one. I mean, I could probably just go on, name all these awesome ones, but yeah, those ones definitely stick out. And just as far as more recent ones, Scott Steiner definitely was one of my favorites for sure. He was awesome.
Yeah, I think Scott Steiner is one of your highest viewed ones on this channel as well. Like he hadn't done one for so long. It was
Yeah,
good to have him.
definitely. He's a lightning rod, that's for sure. And it's funny, like sometimes you hear, oh, Steiner, he's crazy, or he's going to give you a terrible interview, or he's mean. It's like, he couldn't have been nicer. He was awesome. He was cool. Definitely one of my favorites that I've done. He was just nothing but professional and cool and good stories. And obviously, he's a very, very honest guy, which I love too. So he was a lot of fun. And I love Arn Anderson, love Tully Blanchard, Sergeant Slaughter. So there's a couple other awesome ones. Pretty lucky, a lot of the guys I've been able to interview. Even going all the way back, George the Animal Steel, one of my first ones. He was awesome.
Yeah, that one's on this channel as well. That one was pretty good.
He was great, definitely. Ivan Koloff is in one from many years ago. So I know I love getting on a lot of the legends. There's some guys that are newer guys I just love to interview. Like I know people may not like him, but I love to interview Vince Russo. I love Lash LaRue. There's some guys that's just really awesome to talk to, and they get awesome stories, and they could just kind of just shoot from the hip. And I know maybe you won't like it, but Cornette I interviewed 5 times. Jimmy Cornette's awesome. Stan Lane was cool. Dennis Condrey was awesome, super nice guy. So been pretty lucky with a lot of the interviews that I've had.
It all has to do with experiences, and you've had good experiences with him for whatever reason. I don't know. He gets always good hits when he wants to go off on me. So I guess that's why he does it. But I don't know. I think his co-hosts didn't like me, and he loves to do interviews bashing me. So that's fine. But that's why I don't like him.
Hey, I love him. I love Jimmy Cornette. I love him. I know it's not a different experience for you, but I love the guy.
For sure. And of course, what do you have coming up for interviews? And also for Vince Russo, is this a regular thing where you're going to keep doing it every month?
Yeah, for the most part, definitely going to try to do one or two a month with Vince. We're going to cover the Attitude Era, just basically the big shows. Recently, we talked about 1/4/99, aka Raw is Foley, where he wins the WWF title over The Rock with a little help from Stone Cold Steve Austin, which basically ended the Monday Night Wars, and 800,000 people are basically tuning from Nitro to Raw after Shivani, with word from Bischoff, tells him to switch over and watch Raw because Foley's winning the title. That'll put butts in the seats, and that kind of is the end. If you really look at it, that's the end of the Monday Night Wars, because that's kind of the last time really there on WWF would just continue on and keep winning. Then we did Royal Rumble 99. It's just fun getting some backstage stuff from Russo, who wrote the Attitude Era, was a big part of the Attitude Era. And all those guys love, like Austin loves him, The Rock loves him, Goldust loved him, Foley loved him, Undertaker liked him. So, I mean, you get all these cool stories from him, the guy that was writing the shows for the Attitude Era, one of the most popular eras ever in the history of wrestling. So that's fun, and that's fun to do with Russo. Nick Nemeth, aka Dolph Ziggler, was recently on that I did an interview with. He was cool. So got some cool stuff. The Mulkey brothers are coming up. So got some cool random interviews. I kind of like going with some of the guys that you might be familiar with, or you might not heard of a while, or might be more of like a rare guest. So I kind of like going in that direction. But there's going to be some cool random names and some random guests coming up for sure. Just as far as Russo, definitely going to be doing that. And obviously taking to school with Dr. Tom Pritchard, and Taskmaster Talks with Kevin Sullivan. Got a lot of stuff, and obviously going to be trying to do that once a week with Dr. Tom and Kevin. And Russo going to be trying to do it once a month.
As far as Russo too, there's another guy that sadly Jim Cornette has been one of the ones to bury. But honestly, Vince is one of the. I'd put him on the top 10 list of nice people I've met in wrestling, honest and reliable. And for people that aren't in the wrestling business, you wouldn't realize how rare those are.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. They think like, oh, he wrote "Choppy Choppy Your Peepee." I hate this guy. Well, just because he wrote that doesn't mean you should hate the guy if you never met the guy in person. So I've had nothing but positive experience with him. He is one of the very rare guys where he's always on time. He never bitches, complains, moans, or anything. He's very professional. So Hannibal, 100% right. Like when you get guys like that, they are very rare in wrestling. So he's super nice and super cordial, and and send you nice messages and stuff too. And he's very good around the holidays and stuff. So he is a super nice guy. But funny, he gets a bad rep because he could be negative towards the business, and he might not like stuff. And he's very outspoken. And of course, he's from New York, which is very easily hateable. But he's a very rare guy in this business where he's on time, he's prompt, he never complains, he's just super nice, and he's super professional. So you get a guy like that, it's pretty impressive. Even though you would think that should be par for the course, it is definitely not par for the course.
No, I could tell you guys, be it in wrestling since 2001, it's definitely not. And as far as one other thing I've noticed, and you've probably noticed this too in your interviews, a lot of the guys that have got the pushes and are bigger stars, you wouldn't expect them to be like right on time and very professional, but they are. And some of
Yep.
the ones that are the most flaky, like for instance, like Ice Train with me, flaked out 4 or 5 times, and it's too bad because he ended up dying. But it's like this guy wonders why he didn't get a push. Like he was used in WCW and pushed for a period of time, but it makes me think like if he was acting this same way, while working for one of these companies. Maybe that's why he may not have got the push, even though there was potential there.
It is crazy when you think about it, because I'm just thinking about like the big names that I got a chance to interview that I didn't even name or mention before, but like Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Shawn Michaels, who I've interviewed, Kane a few times, and you would think like, oh, they're going to show up later, they're not going to show up. Goldberg, they actually, from what I'm remembering, was like a few minutes early. Especially, I remember Shawn Michaels because I was just sitting there on the line, and he like popped in. He's like, oh, I just want to make sure everything's working all right. I know we're supposed to start in 3 minutes, but I want to make sure I'm on time. I don't want to miss. Like, it very professional, and you like thinking like, wow, these are the guys that actually made it, and are the huge names, so they should almost not be late, but they know that to be professional. And remember Hacksaw Jim Duggan, he's up perfectly either early or on time. He knows exactly when to be there. The guys that usually flake out and aren't on time and kind of give you a hard time were the guys that didn't really make it. So you kind of can almost equate the same. It's like, maybe that's why you didn't make it. Not because, hey, you're poo pooing you because you're nothing, you're a podcast. They don't care about the interview. It's about professionalism. So I feel like that's why some of these guys made it, and why the bigger names that I interview always kind of, to me, hit home runs as far as being on time, being prompt, being professional. The flakes are the ones that didn't make it in the business for the most part.
Kurt Angle, I know you interviewed too, but he was early for mine too. I'm like, holy
Yes,
shit, Kurt
yes.
Angle's actually 5 minutes early. I'm
Yes, because I
shocked.
remember, you can see him in the showroom underneath, obviously the fans, but when you're hosting the show, you could see it. I'm thinking to myself, oh, I'm gonna get a drink, whatever, and Angle, I'm just sitting there, popped on. I'm like, oh my god! So I had to put on my headset real quick, and I was like, oh hey, Mr. Angle, sorry, I didn't realize you were waiting here. But he's another awesome interview. But yeah, he was early. I was shocked. I was just looking at my computer, thank God, and I was like, oh damn, he's already waiting. So guys like him, super professional, and obviously, one of the biggest stars of all time, and no wonder why.
And as I said, I remember Bagwell, not to pick on him, but like he no showed the first few times. Then when he showed up 15 minutes late, he told me 15 minutes late is actually good for me. So when you talk about in Dark Side of the Ring, for instance, they claim that that match was the reason he wasn't used. I really don't think so. I'm pretty positive he probably brought that same kind of attitude to WWE. Then when he got fired, he showed that attitude on the Indies. So it wasn't like Eddie Guerrero going on the Indies after his screw up and
If
like turning things around and showing
Yeah,
what they missed.
I love Buff, but if you listen to the Jim Ross stuff about it, I've even asked Ross about it. But I mean, it's out there. He's done interviews with Conrad about it. I mean, he's done his own podcast about it where he's talked about Buff before. And if you listen to Jr., I mean, he hits the nail on the head. He missed the show. He didn't report in. His mom reported in. I mean, there was a bunch of stories that Jr. had said, and people are like, oh, maybe Buff's telling the truth, maybe JR's making up. I don't think JR lies. I don't think JR makes it up. I think you got to go with JR on this when he was saying Buff was a bit unprofessional at that point, and obviously rubbed some people the wrong way. He got in a fight with Hurricane Helms, so I don't think he ingratiated himself properly in the WWF.
No, because if you think about it, that match really wasn't bad, and they kept
No, not
Booker
really.
around.
Yeah,
Booker
not
was one
really.
of the most successful WCW people to switch to WWE.
Right, yeah, and Booker T wrestled a few nights later against DDP. I mean, Booker had no problems and absolutely no issues whatsoever. But another thing, if you look at it, and I know people said JBL stiffed Bagwell when, remember, they beat him up, threw him out of the building, and that was kind of a thing from Vince, like, really teach this guy a lesson. Who knows if that's true or not? But JBL definitely stiffs him in that little beat up, when they beat them up and throw him out of the building.
I'll have to go back and look at that. Very
Oh,
interesting.
the clothesline from hell. Oof, yeah.
DDP, I'll just say, is another guy that's earlier on time who I've interviewed a bunch of times.
Super duper professional, and even like, hey, you get a little text, hey bro, I'm here or something. You're like, oh my god, okay, like you're ready for him. Yeah, DDP is awesome. What a nice guy. Super uber professional, almost too professional. Like he's got this down to a science, like how to do this stuff and be professional. I mean, he's awesome. I love DDP, and
And
obviously
you,
he made it. Obviously that's why he made it. He's a super professional, uber professional.
yeah, WWE seemed to hold a grudge with him for whatever reason. I guess the Undertaker didn't like him or something. But
Yeah.
you can
Yep.
see that he made it. He was talented, I'll definitely say that, but he was a good politician and being professional because you want
Hey,
to push professional people.
and literally saves lives. If you really look at it, the guy is literally saving people's lives, and obviously he's helping out a bunch of his friends, but he's helping out the regular people too. So it's funny when Mark Manning used to say "DD me," he's all about DDP. He's all about himself and call him DD me and stuff. But man, he's helped Jake. He obviously helped Scott Hall. He's helping Buff. He helped Butterbean. Helped Scotty Riggs, who looks like $1 million, and he's helping a lot of regular folk as well. So DDP is awesome in my book. I love DDP. Fellow Asbury Park boy, fellow New Jersey boy, DDP.
Yes, and I was actually interviewing a UFO guy the other night that also is from Asbury Park and used to actually work
Oh,
with Bruce Springsteen at a concert hall there. So
yeah,
I
nice,
was
nice,
thinking of you.
nice. That's awesome. And I love the UFO stuff, by the way. Love that stuff. Good stuff. Good content.
Very good. Well, as we said, a lot of wrestlers are flaky. One thing I will notice, you probably will notice this with MMA people too. UFO people are very reliable, and MMA people, for whatever reason, are more reliable than wrestlers. I don't know, in my opinion.
Weird. Yeah. In my my experience, MMA guys. I haven't really interviewed too many MMA guys, but Boss Rutan, Ken Shamrock, Frank Shamrock, David Tebow, DDP is the man. I agree. The only one that was a little flaky MMA wise was Bob Sapp. But like that's kind of what you'd expect from Bob. He actually forgot the time, so I called him and then I reminded him, and then we did the interview. But Bob Sapp might have been the only one, but just being forgetful. Obviously, he has an excuse because he's great and maybe he had other things going on. But yeah, for the most part, Josh Barnett was on time. Yeah, most of my MMA guys are pretty on the ball.
And Bob is actually a wrestler too at one
Yeah, it's
point.
true. He is a pro wrestler. Yeah, true. Former IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, former WCW product as well. Yeah, Bob Sapp,
Yeah.
pretty awesome. I'll give him a pass. So he gets a
It's
pass.
it's amazing that you see those interviews of him in WCW. I
Yeah,
think Mike O'Hearn was supposed to be in WCW at one point too before they went out of business. Now I
yes.
see he's going to be on Bloodsport in Japan, which is interesting.
Really? Wow.
Yeah,
Nice. I
I
like
don't
that.
know if that's I don't know if he has like a following in Japan from Gladiators or what,
Oh,
or if he's
probably. Yeah.
friends.
Sam Greco, by the way, also was in the power plant. He was also in WCW. Another legend, MMA legend there. Sam Greco.
Wow, they had a lot of people there. Tank
Yeah,
Abbott
too
was in the
bad.
power
Yep.
plant too.
Yep. Yep. Another awesome guy. I got to
Yeah,
interview Tank. I gotta have that happen. Rick or you need to set that up for me.
Rick was the one that made the initial introduction, but I could probably ask him for sure. I know I'll usually ask through his wife,
Okay,
but
nice.
also I would put Tank in, and then I'll consider him a wrestler. He is one of the nicest by far, and I actually got to hang out with him quite a bit when I was in Arizona, and it was a lot of fun hanging out with him and his wife. I consider him a friend now. Like he doesn't have an he might be a good talker, but he's actually not arrogant at all. Like he's not like he doesn't consider himself a star or anything.
Wow.
Like he's very down to earth. He of course loves when he was fighting. He loved to fight and knew he could beat certain people up and would talk about that. But as a person, he's a good guy.
Legendary tough guy. He was one of those guys. He didn't care if he won or lost. He was going to go partying afterwards, and you were probably going to end up in the hospital as the opponent. So I love that attitude.
Him and Severn, I find you got to respect them because they would just take any fight. Severn
Yeah,
didn't
that
even have
too.
training
Yeah, they
camp.
didn't care. Yeah. Yep.
That just doesn't happen these days. You look, Severn had like 130 MMA fights somewhere around there. It's like
Yeah.
that record will never be broken. It's like he's just gonna just show up and oh, okay, it's not wrestling tonight. I'm actually fighting.
He'll take any fight. One of the biggest tough guys. I mean, I don't care. I'll fight anybody, anytime, any place.
Yeah, it's such a long career too. Hello, Tom. Well, John, of course, people can see on here. We're also streaming this on your two-man power trip channel.
Nice.
Where else can they follow you?
Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Two Man Power Trip. Go to Patreon, patreon.com/TMPT Empire, and also go to TeePublic, tpublic.com/stores/TMPT. Get some TMP shirts and get some Hogan era stuff as well if you're a big Hogan fan.
Well, we hope to get a report from you this weekend on how your WrestleMania experience is, if you have time.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Night two, I'm going to just night two. So should be a good one.
Well, I
I
hope
hope.
you enjoy it. It's not that far of a drive for you, Philadelphia, is it?
About an hour. It won't be too bad.
All those New York, New Jersey, Philly are all right beside each other. That's pretty good.
Yeah. So for me, I've been kind of lucky because I used to go, obviously, MSG to East Rutherford with the Meadowlands, not too far from me. Philadelphia is not too far. So been kind of lucky being in New Jersey and being who Hulkamania 1 through 9. We had enough Hogan. Oh, Daniel doesn't has enough Hogan. Being in New Jersey, been kind of lucky as a wrestling fan.
And by the way, for Brett, I'll just say I liked it when Hogan came in and beat Yokozuna as much as Bret Hart hated it. I actually thought that made for a more interesting ending, but 9 was one of the worst
Well,
WrestleManias for me.
well, to me, I always judge it by the crowd. When Hogan won, the crowd went nuts. So obviously the people there liked it. So to me, I give it the thumbs up because the crowd loved it. I know obviously for Brett, he didn't like it, but it wasn't really. It's funny because you could see he was kind of being pushed aside by Vince. It was about Yoko and Hogan, and obviously the rematch at King of the Ring is Yoko killing Hogan and killing Hulkamania. So it was more about Yoko, and I loved that. I mean, awesome WrestleMania moment for me, and the crowd loved it too. I don't know about the Bret Hart fans or Bret, but obviously the crowd in the Caesar's Palace there, they loved it.
And I honestly think, from the bottom of my heart, as much as Brett likes to think him and Hogan was the money match, Hogan always did better against the monster heels like Yokozuna. So at least at that time, I do think they made the right choice there. With that, and I can
Hogan,
understand Hogan wouldn't probably didn't want to put Brett over. I don't doubt it. He doesn't want another baby face to be competition to him. It's part of the politics. Everyone does it in wrestling that's a top star.
yeah, it's just a part of the politics of the business, which is funny. People were complaining about it. That's wrestling for you. And when you're the number one star, of course, you could play more politics than other people. Steve Austin didn't get to work with a bunch of people. Why? Because he said, I'm not working with those people. It's politics. And it's funny. People will bring up,
Including Hogan, by the way,
yeah,
even though they
including
later denied it.
Hogan, yes. So it's funny, Austin didn't want to work with Hogan. So that's why the match never happened because Austin said no. Jeff Jarrett didn't want to work him. So that's why it just didn't happen. So politics has always been a part of the business. Look at Triple H and his run. I mean, it's just a part. John Cena, my God, he would bury guys and get guys fired and this and that. You don't hear people complaining about it for some reason because it's Hogan. People have a hard on for hating on him sometimes. So I feel like people just don't get it on us in business. When you're the biggest star of all time, yeah, you're going to have a little bit of politics behind you, but you're able to because you are the biggest star in the business. So if you want to work with Yoko, you can. And I've heard from a few guys that were close to Hogan that for some reason Hogan couldn't get it out of his mind that Brett was wrestling him in handicap matches when it was the Mega Powers against Honky Tonk and the Hart Foundation. That he thinks like, Brett's kind of a mid card guy, upper mid card guy. He's a tag guy. I don't want to put him over. I want to put over this huge monster Samoan, Yokozuna. So there's that part of it too, where he kind of didn't see Brett as that big star.
And also, I believe Afa and Sika used to take care of Hogan on the road, so it probably he'd rather give
Love,
back.
yes, he loved the Samoans. Yep, yep, big time.
And for the game, Triple H, he really is the game of the master politician at playing the game.
Yeah,
He ends
yep.
up marrying the boss's daughter. The best political move you can do. Last thing I'll just mention briefly, in that CM Punk interview with Ariel Helwani, he like talks about how there's no more politics in WWE. It's like you're no longer in competition with anyone. Like
Right.
you've made it as a top star. Nobody's taking your position. You got your own dressing room. Like you're established, and you're getting paid a ton of money. It's like you don't have to be in that dark environment anymore because you made it to the next level. I'm
Yeah,
sure there is politics back there still. Maybe not as bad now with all the guaranteed contracts, but like I know, for instance, Kevin Owens is a huge politician backstage. Good for him. It's worked to his advantage.
Hey, that's what you got to do. Look at even at like baseball in sports. David Ortiz was like the biggest politician. He'd be nice to all the media and stuff. He was a steroid abuser, got caught with steroids, and he's still in the Hall of Fame. He's the only guy because he was a master politician. He was nice to everybody. The media loved him. The players love him. It's just the way it is sometimes, and the way you got to be, and you got to be smart, and you got to learn your way around the business. So if Triple H was doing politics, you got to figure out how to outmaneuver him. For instance, look who his boss is right now, technically. The Rock could be the greatest politician of all time in the business. So that's just the way it goes. I mean, when you're that big of a star and you have that political push, you got to use it because somebody else will steal your spot and steal your money. So it's better you be on top than somebody else.
Yes, and I definitely didn't play that game properly. By the way, Randy Orton's another guy that's got people fired.
Oh
And
yeah,
he's a good
yeah,
politician.
yes,
One of
yes.
them being
But
Snitsky.
yeah, yep, for sure. But hey, he's one of the all-time greats. He can kind of call his own shots, so that's par for the course, and it happens. Unfortunately, it happens.
For sure. Well, we appreciate all your content. As I said, the fans love you. It's clear from the comments. No haters today on there.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
We wish you a great WrestleMania weekend, and we'll let you close it off.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Check out Hannibal TV. Check out the two-man power trip on the Hannibal TV. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you right back